Hey, what's up everybody? This is Todd from Your Fishing Adventure. This is going to be a quick video about jigging techniques. So I'm going to switch to the GoPro and we'll go from there. Why jigging technique? Well, the truth is I was getting skunked more often than not. I was not catching very many fish. I was catching maybe one fish every 2 or 3 trips out. I was doing the things that usually people do, you know, fishing along the shoreline and finding the structure, which can get really crowded. I was not catching the striped bass with any kind of frequency. I wasn't catching the channel catfish or the blue catfish with any kind of frequency or walleye. But then something happened. COVID happened. I started fishing every day and I started just zooming in on jigging technique. And so all the fish you see on this channel are caught from 2 different jigs. And let me show you what those jigs are. So I'm using primarily the 1/16 ounce tube head jig that you see here. And this is good in about 5 feet to maybe 15 feet of water, not much deeper than that. The one that's the really versatile one, that's the main go-to in these videos, is the 1/8 ounce tube head jig that you can see here. And this one, you can use this in anything from 10 feet of water without snagging, down to 40, 45. I've caught fish jigging crisply at like 45 feet. So you're probably thinking, why is this guy recommending tube head jigs? Don't you just use those with tubes? And yeah, they're great with plastic tubes. You can catch smallmouth bass. It looks like a crayfish. But I use tube head jigs with pretty much everything. I use them with worms. I use them with Berkley Gulp minnows. And the reason is because the hook is relatively short, so it doesn't make the bait look as rigid. Putting the Berkley Gulp minnow on there, you can see that the hook, as I said, is relatively short. So it's only going to make part of the Berkley Gulp minnow rigid. The rest is going to move naturally. People have used different kinds, but the 3-inch works. I also go with the 4-inch sometimes, and I'll cast these for striped bass. I'll cast right into the schools of fish that I see coming to the surface. Otherwise, I'm just looking for drop-offs. So let's start with the spring. So in the spring, fish are coming to the surface. There's bugs at the surface, there are minnows. Everything eating the bugs and the minnows also comes to the surface. So you'll get the big fish at the surface. So I'll find bottom structure using an inexpensive depth finder, and I'll put a link to that below. I'll find bottom structure, either drop-offs or something called porcupine cribs. They're artificial structures. I'll put a link to how to find those below. And I'll cast over the top of them. And what I'll do is I'll just cast over them, let it sink a little bit, and do a constant retrieve with jigging as it's coming in. And I'll put a link below to a video where you can see me doing exactly this, catching a bunch of largemouth and then ultimately a striped bass. Let's talk about after the spring, when the fish start to go a little bit deeper, water gets warmer. In the summer, they're going to go down into the cooler water, okay? But they're not going to go below the thermocline. And I'll put a link on this video to describe exactly how to find the thermocline and what it means. There's no oxygen there. So in the summer, they're going deeper, but not below the thermocline. So let me just show you how I would cast to get it down to the bottom. The key thing about this is this tube head jig falls at around 1 feet to 1.5 feet per second. And that's really important because I can time when this will be on the bottom. So if I cast it out, and let's say I want to get it to the bottom, let's say it's 15 feet there, and I can count it down to when I think it'll be on the bottom based upon how fast it falls. And you can look at how fast it falls on a dock and just look at it, and you can count it down. So let's say this gets to the bottom at 12. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 1 jig at 6, at the count of 6, like that. Give it 1 jig to catch the suspended fish on the way down. A few fish will be suspended occasionally, so a jig halfway down helps you find those fish. And then what I do is I'll count it the rest of the way down and let it get right to the bottom. And this is for summer, late summer, fall. When you're fishing drop-offs, that's what you're doing, is you're getting down to the fish. So I do this in 3 phases. So I do the jig as 1 phase, the pause and let it drop down, and let it drop, and then the reel, the slow reel, the retrieve. So it's 3 phases every time. And what I'm doing there is I'm gauging to see where I catch the fish. So if I catch the fish in one of those phases, that's the phase that I have to focus on more. Let's say this is casted out, and let's say it goes down to the bottom, and let's say it's on the bottom. Most fish during active times when they're chasing are going to hit it after you jig and on the way down. So after you jig it, you're leaving slack, but not so much slack that you can't see if a fish takes off with it. So you're giving it a jig, watching the slack. If you get a hit there, that's when you set the hook. Just to give you an example to tie all this together, let's say I'm going to cast this out. It has a worm on it, but usually a Berkley Gulp. In the summer I usually use a worm, and I cast it out. Let's say it's 20 feet here. I want to cast it 20 feet high so it has that slack to fall. If it's breezy like it is today, I'll cast into the wind, and that's because as the wind drifts me backwards, I can see the line better and I can feel it better when I get a hit. If I cast off to the side, which you sometimes have to do when you're casting toward a drop-off, there'll be an arc of your line, and you won't have the same feeling and sensitivity of a hit. So ideally, casting into the wind is going to be how you feel the fish. So right there was actually a hit. So if that's a fish. Let's see what this is. Oh, striped bass. Nice. I think it's a little white bass. I can't believe it. I'm doing a little jigging presentation. This is awesome. Yes. Very nice little guy. Here, out in the open water, you'll have these large areas with drop-offs, and you'll find all kinds of fish schooling together. So you'll find also that they're also feeding on the same things. So your presentation that works on, say, a largemouth bass will probably also work on a catfish and anything else in that school. So that first fish that you catch, that gives you very valuable information, because let's say you cast it out, you let it go to the bottom, say you give it a jig and you let it fall. If you get the fish on the fall, that tells you how the fish in that school are feeding, and that's going to help you catch other species in that school because they're all feeding generally on the same thing. The next day it's probably going to be a different story. Let's see what this is. Let's see you. Oh, catfish. Oh, come here, buddy. All right. So I had to toss that one back in. He actually went down into the pedal drive, and I had to take the pedal drive out, so I spared you guys all of that. That one was caught. I was not doing much of a retrieve. I was starting to slowly retrieve it. So that tells me the popping in this particular area, the jigging isn't going to be what's necessarily key. Saw that I got the white bass and also the catfish. Same place, same area, same drop off where it goes 10 feet down to 15 feet. That's really important because there's another drop off where it goes from 15 down to 30 and even 50 over there. You just saw all these techniques coming together, looking for the drop off, using the 3 phases of jigging, and that fish was caught during the slow phase, so I'm going to slow it down. Actually, even though it's summer and warm, you adapt to the way the fish are hitting. It's not always going to be the same. In the fall, they're going to stay active, maybe even get a little bit more active. So your presentation in the fall, you're going to pop it about 18 inches, let it drop, and watch it. It's going to be the same thing. But something changes dramatically towards the end of fall. It's late fall, it's getting cooler, it's below 60 degrees. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to cast it out, you're going to let it drop down to the bottom, do your jig halfway down. You'll be surprised how many fish you get on that one jig halfway down. And then when it gets down to the bottom, you're going to do a little tiny pop like that, pause for a while, 2-3 seconds, and then a retrieve. Slow retrieve. Pop, long pause, slow retrieve. And this is going to be late fall. Now, as the temperatures get cooler, now once you start to get to around 50 degrees or less, then you do your pauses even longer. Sometimes you literally just let it sit on the bottom. I've caught some of my biggest hybrid bass just letting it sit on the bottom. I'll cast it out and I'll be checking something on my phone and it'll be literally doing nothing, and that's when a fish hits it. When it gets colder, their metabolism slows down, they're cold-blooded, and they can't afford to burn calories. They can't afford to chase the minnow. The reason why you're letting it sit on the bottom and barely move it and let it sit and barely move it, let it sit, is because you're just telling the fish it's safe for you to expend a couple calories, fish, to come after this. Usually in the winter, if you're not catching fish, it's because you're moving your jig too much. In the summer and in the fall, if you're not catching fish, you're not stimulating them enough. You're not giving them that pop to alert their attention. Because in the warmer months, they're looking for stuff to attack. I'm actually getting a bite now in the summer, doing a winter fishing strategy, but that's, you do whatever works, okay? So this isn't gonna be a cookie cutter thing.
I'll do a link below to finding bait fish, but you mainly either look for the seagulls finding the bait fish, or you look for warm water sources entering cold water sources.
You tailor your jigging for each season, you'll find you will consistently catch fish, and it is no exaggeration. All the fish you've seen so far caught on this channel, we're using the techniques that I just showed you. Just using a simple depth finder to show you where the bottom is. I'll put a link below to how you find free maps online. I mapped out this lake, this is Berkley Lake in Ohio, before I came here to find the drop-offs. That's how I found this area here where you just saw me catch a fish. It's really hard to not catch fish if you really are dialed into these drop-offs. So I hope that helps you understanding how to fish these drop-offs and catch fish more consistently. If you like this video, go ahead and click on the like. Please also go ahead and become a subscriber if you're so inclined, and otherwise I will see you on the next one.